if I could summarize the message of every motivational speaker and self-help book written in just 3 words, it would be to follow your passion. And follow your passion seems like a pretty cool thing to say, but it often doesn't make sense. Like, what if you're passionate about watching Game of Thrones? Or what if you're passionate about watching Friends? That's what most people our age are passionate about. 10 years ago, I even went to the extent of making an Orkut group called We Were on a Break, dedicated to Friends. And every time I was on a break, I used to post Friends-related jokes out there, until, of course, Orkut itself took a break from all of us. And the biggest misconception about following your passion is that it's a career decision. Not everyone can have a job which they love, but everyone can lead a life which they love by making use of their free time. First, ask yourself, does your passion necessarily have to be a career? Does it make practical and financial sense to make your passion into a career? Or can you just follow your passion in your free time? Everyone talks about following your passion. Not enough people talk about how to follow your passion, and that's what I'm here to do today. I wrote the book Selfienomics, which did pretty well, and I followed my passion of writing the book. And today I'm going to be talking about the myths associated with following your passion. The biggest myth of following your passion is never give up. We keep hearing never give up, keep persevering until the finish line. And according to me, everyone knows the importance of hard work and perseverance. But what is just as important is to learn when to give up and when you're getting nothing out of it. The most important lesson that I learned in my journey of writing and publishing a book was the lesson of learning how to give up and being flexible with your dreams. My dream initially was to publish a book for an American audience. I wrote 250 pages, and I submitted a few chapters of my book to more than 50 publishers in New York. And I got rejected from everywhere, and most of them ignored me, but a few of them were brutally honest. And they told me, your work is great, but to be honest, no American is interested in reading a self-help book written by an Indian unless it's about yoga and spirituality. And at first, I was very disheartened and frustrated. But when I thought about it again, it made sense to me. Every major self-help book written by an Indian which has done well abroad is always about yoga and spirituality. So like books by Deepak Chopra, Sadhguru, Yogi, Paramhans Raj, and books like Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, that's what works. But my book, Selfienomics, is not about yoga or spirituality. So while I was passionate about my work, I was also practical about my work, and I rewrote the entire book for an Indian audience. And it didn't turn out that bad because we Indians, we like to desify everything. You go to Haldiram and you find pizzas with bhujia on it. And I'm pretty sure if Da Vinci Code was written by a Punjabi, he would name it Vinci da Code. And retrospectively, it turned out quite well because I should always think of Indian examples in the first go. That's because I'm born and brought up in India. So I just Indianized the entire book, and Donald Trump became Rahul Gandhi, Cristiano Ronaldo became Virat Kohli, and I let Priyanka Chopra remain Priyanka Chopra. So coming to the second myth is think positive. And we keep hearing think positive, but according to me, we should not just think positive, we should think critically. We should think solution-oriented. Thinking positive has become more of a justification mechanism to justify the negatives rather than fight the negatives. So when I first told my friends, man, I'm really frustrated, I got rejected by one more publisher, he told me, don't worry, 28 publishers even rejected someone like J.K. Rowling. So I am not supposed to worry just because 28 publishers rejected J.K. Rowling. And that's the message that we get every day. And these stories of struggles and failures of other people are meant to inspire us, and they do. we do often get inspired by these kind of stories. But another byproduct of these stories is that failure is being taken very lightly. Failure has almost become the norm and the new in thing. And people think that the more you fail, the cooler your success story will sound. Till a few years ago, only Ekta Kapoor used to call herself a serial entrepreneur. No puns intended. And now every third person on LinkedIn calls themselves a serial entrepreneur, boasting about how many startups he's busted. And we've adopted a failure-oriented mindset in which we think that if we keep failing, we will succeed eventually. But instead, we must adopt a success-oriented mindset in which we question ourselves, what can I do differently so that I stop failing and start succeeding? How can I change my startup business model so that investors will be willing to invest in my startup? How can I rewrite my manuscript so that a publisher will be willing to publish my book? It's not just failure, but learning from failure which leads you to success. And this brings me to the third myth of following your passion, which is before you begin, discuss your idea with your friends and family and plan out extensively. And that's what we all do. Whenever we have any idea, our first instinct is to discuss it with our friends and family. And they usually provide us with constructive criticism. And they show us the flaws in our plan. And they usually say something like, when you tell them your idea, they usually say something like, oh, that sounds like a great idea, but you should be careful about this. Oh, that sounds amazing, but there are already many people doing that. And no puns intended, but there's always a big but between you and your dreams. So this sort of criticism that we get from our friends and family may be helpful to starting, but often too much criticism early on can be very demotivating. Just try and visualize my situation 2 years ago when I was telling my idea to my friends and family. And back then, 6 months in a row, day and night, I was studying for my IIM entrance exams. I managed to do pretty well, and somehow I got into IIM Bangalore. And then out of nowhere, I decided not to go. Why? Because I wanted to write a self-help comedy book with hashtags and memes inspired by AIB and TVF, and I wanted to leave my job in New York and come to India and leave my work visa to write a book with having no writing background. So you can imagine how ridiculous my idea was seeming. I'm wanting to quit my job, I want to leave IIM to write a book. And my friends and family, they could never imagine how anyone could be smart enough to get into IIM, but stupid enough not to go. And I tried to convince them. You know, Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, all these big people that we hear of, they're all dropouts. And I'm going one step further. I'm not even dropping out. I'm not even going in the first place. The only person who was supportive in my entire journey was my mom. And she told me, Beta, if you go to IIM, you'll write books like the other IIM authors. And we all know what kind of books the IIM authors write. So she told me, don't go to IIM. And before you begin, you'll always feel like you need to know a lot more before you begin. You want to plan out things perfectly. But you know what? Perfection slows you down. Since there is no limit to the amount you can plan, a lot of us get stuck in the planning stage. And after a point of time, planning is synonymous with procrastination and is just an excuse to avoid to begin. You don't need to know every step in order to begin. Just focus on the first couple of steps and take it from there. You'll understand how one thing leads to the other, and smaller successes leads to bigger successes. And this brings me to the myth 4, which is there's always motivation around you. In this day and age, there are more demotivating things happening around us rather than motivating. So according to me, we have to proactively try and find motivation rather than wait for motivation to come to us. It's not motivation, but rather frequent motivation which leads us to success. 2 years ago, I changed my email password to I am an author, even though I was not an author back then. And every time I typed my email password, I am an author, it motivated me to complete my book. And this particularly helped me when I was constantly getting rejected by publishers day in and day out. And I could see my so-called batchmates at IIM get into the top tech and banking jobs. And at that time, I thought maybe not going to IIM was a mistake. But then I typed my password on my email, I am an author. And it reminded me of why I started in the first place. And I realized that if I had actually gone to IIM and not written the book, I would have a regret. Just by the way, I've changed my password since then, so please don't try and hack my account. I had first set my password as I hope to be an author, but Gmail said that my password is too weak. So I used innovative ways like this to take control of my motivation rather than wait for motivation to come to me. And this brings me to the fifth myth, which is there will be a happily ever after. And this is probably the most important thing which I want to say today, is because following your passion has always been glorified by the media. And the people who usually follow their passion, they're always portrayed as, oh, they have well-settled jobs, and then they quit that, and then they struggle for many years, and then they somehow succeed, and then they live happily ever after. But the harsh truth is that the struggle never ends. The struggle keeps going on and on. Just the way you can regret giving up on your dreams, you can also regret chasing your dreams and not taking a more realistic path. I wrote the book Selfienomics. It did pretty well. It became a bestseller. It even got featured in the World Book Fair. But now what do? I don't have any concrete ideas for my second book. And I'm pretty clueless. I don't know what the next step should be. The struggle never ends. So you may want to start a company, and you manage to get funding. It may even become profitable. But the struggle doesn't end there. It keeps continuing. You may want to become an actor, and you get a break with a big director. And you may think that's the end of it all. But no, that's not the end. That's just the beginning. The struggle keeps continuing. The hardest part often is not to become successful, is to remain successful. And when we try and make a brave decision, and we do it, and if it does not turn out that well, it's usually a mistake. But if we didn't do it at all, it would be a regret. Our aim in life should be to minimize regrets, not to minimize mistakes. And I would like to end my talk with a quote from my book, Selfienomics. An average mind can think of a brilliant idea, but it takes a brilliant mind to execute one. Do you want to settle for a stable, mediocre present, or do you want to chase a better future which may not even come? The choice is yours.